In the vast expanse of prehistory, before the written word, before kingdoms and monuments, there existed a world governed by instinct, cooperation, and survival. It was a world where every dawn was uncertain, where life and death balanced upon the edge of endurance. In that world, the fate of our species depended not on kings or warriors, for there were none, but on the quiet strength of women and the boundless curiosity of children. Together, they formed the heartbeat of humanity's earliest societies, the invisible thread weaving the story of civilization long before history began to be written. In the frozen plains of the Ice Age, human groups were small, vulnerable, and constantly moving. The hunt was dangerous, unpredictable, and often unsuccessful. Food scarcity was a constant threat, and every decision could mean the difference between life and extinction. But even then, early humans learned a truth that would define our kind forever. Survival depended on unity. While men ventured far to hunt, it was the women who held the fabric of life together. They gathered, they healed, they remembered. They carried the knowledge of plants and animals, the seasons and the cycles of the earth. They were the living libraries of their people. Women understood the landscape in ways that few could match. They knew which roots nourished and which poisoned, which leaves soothed wounds and which brought fever. They observed, experimented, and remembered. Over countless generations, this quiet expertise formed the first science, the science of life itself. Their understanding of nature's subtle patterns, the timing of rains, the migration of herds, the sprouting of edible plants, turned mere survival into continuity. Around the hearth, women created order from chaos. Fire was the center of existence, warmth, protection, and light. It was also a classroom. Here, the next generation learned not from instruction, but from observation. Children watched their mothers grind seeds with stones, weave fibers into baskets, and shape hides into clothing. They mimicked every gesture, turning necessity into learning, and learning into innovation. It was through play, curiosity, and imitation that children carried human ingenuity forward. These lessons, passed through generations without words, became the earliest form of education. They were not written in books, but in motion, in the movement of hands, in the songs hummed to calm an infant, in the rhythms of work and laughter shared by the firelight. Through these simple yet profound acts, humanity began to preserve knowledge beyond instinct. Each generation did not start from zero. It built upon the discoveries of those who came before. This continuity, forged by women and carried by children, was the seed of culture. Archaeology reveals their presence in fragments. A small handprint on a cave wall, the impression of a woven mat fossilized in clay, a necklace made of shells and bones, buried with a woman who may have been a healer or leader. These remnants speak of a world where creativity, care, and craft were not luxuries, they were tools of survival. And they tell us that women were not silent figures in the background of history, but active architects of the human story. In the caves of Chauvet and Lascaux, where animals leap across stone in the flickering light of torches, researchers have found handprints belonging not only to men, but also to women and children. They painted, they imagined, they recorded the world as they saw it. The act of creating art, of turning experience into symbol, was revolutionary. It transformed humanity from a creature that merely lived to one that remembered, reflected, and dreamed. As millennia passed, societies became more complex, but the role of women and children remained central. The mastery of fire, the invention of tools, the domestication of animals, each of these leaps forward was shaped by collaboration and shared experience. The knowledge of how to store food, how to cook, how to heal, these were discoveries born from necessity. refined through observation, and passed down through care. In this way, women were the first scientists, the first doctors, the first teachers. They also became the guardians of ritual and belief. Around the fire, they told stories of spirits and ancestors, of the sun and moon, of life and death. These myths were not mere entertainment. They were moral codes, survival guides, and repositories of memory. Through them, children learned the dangers of pride, the importance of cooperation, and the cycles of nature. The storytelling voice of the mother became the first teacher of ethics, history, and identity. Meanwhile, the children, with their endless curiosity, transformed observation into innovation. Their playful experiments, skipping stones across water, mimicking the calls of animals, shaping clay into forms, were acts of discovery. Through them, humanity developed imagination, and imagination would one day give birth to invention. Each child's question, "Why does this happen?" was a spark lighting the future of science and creativity. In their laughter and curiosity lay the promise of human progress. Yet, survival was never gentle. Life expectancy was short, and death was a frequent visitor. Women faced the peril of childbirth without aid or medicine, often sacrificing their lives to bring new ones into the world. Their endurance became the most profound act of strength, a strength not measured in violence or domination, but in persistence and care. They bore the future upon their shoulders, one generation after another, without recognition or glory. And because of them, humanity endured when so many other species vanished into extinction. The cooperation between women created the earliest forms of social networks. They shared responsibilities, caring for the young, tending the sick, protecting the elderly. In doing so, they formed the first true communities. These bonds were more than practical. They were emotional, spiritual, and deeply human. They created empathy, the foundation of all civilization. While men often worked in smaller, competitive groups for hunting, women's collaborative spirit fostered communication, trust, and continuity. This balance between the competitive and the cooperative became the dual heartbeat of humanity. Children thrived within this framework of shared care. The village that raised them was not a metaphor, it was reality. Every child learned from many adults. Every adult watched over many children. This communal structure allowed knowledge to spread widely, ensuring that no skill or story would be lost. It was a living web of memory, sustained by voices and hands. As humanity moved from hunter-gatherer societies to early agriculture, the role of women expanded further. They were the first to notice the potential of seeds, how plants could regrow from what was left behind. This observation, simple yet transformative, marked the beginning of farming. Women, through daily contact with the land, became the founders of agriculture. They turned wild landscapes into gardens, and temporary camps into permanent settlements. With this, the world changed forever. Stability replaced wandering. Villages grew. Time itself began to be measured in seasons, in harvests, in generations. The shift to agriculture also brought new responsibilities. Women managed crops, stored grain, cared for children, and tended to the hearth, while still maintaining the old knowledge of herbs and medicine. Their understanding of the natural world deepened, becoming both practical and spiritual. Many of the earliest deities in human religion were female symbols of fertility, earth, and creation. The Great Mother, in her many names and forms, embodied humanity's recognition of the life-giving power that women represented. In ancient figurines, like the Venus of Willendorf, carved nearly 25,000 years ago, we see this reverence not for beauty, but for the sacred mystery of life itself. Children in these early villages lived within an expanding world of ideas. They saw fields growing, tools being shaped, and animals being tamed. Every day was a lesson. They were taught through song, through rhythm, through the patterns of the seasons. As they grew, they carried these lessons forward, slowly transforming the world into one of order and creation. The continuity of culture, the passing of ideas, customs, and innovations became humanity's greatest inheritance. And yet, with agriculture came complexity and hierarchy. As food became abundant and societies grew larger, power began to concentrate. The egalitarian structures of hunter-gatherer life slowly gave way to systems of control. In many places, the central role of women began to fade from public recognition, even though their influence remained essential. They continued to nurture, to heal, to teach. But history, written later by men, often overlooked their contributions. What had once been sacred became ordinary, and what was ordinary became invisible. Still, the essence of their power never vanished. It persisted in the unbroken chain of mothers teaching daughters, of elders guiding the young, of stories whispered by the fire. Through every age, from stone tools to bronze weapons, from caves to cities, the rhythm of life remained anchored in the same pattern. Women preserving, children learning, humanity advancing. The story of civilization is not only a chronicle of conquest or invention, it is the story of survival through care. Behind every great leap forward, the wheel, the plow, the written word, stood generations of women and children whose daily labor, curiosity, and endurance made progress possible. Their work was rarely recorded, but without it, there would be no history at all. When we study the traces of our ancestors, what we find is not a record of domination, but of cooperation. The marks left on bones, the wear on grinding stones, the soot on cave ceilings, all these speak of shared life, of communities held together by empathy. Women's hands taught humanity to transform nature. Children's minds taught humanity to dream. Together, they shaped what it means to be human. And so, as we look back across the millennia, across the shifting ice and dust of forgotten ages, one truth becomes clear. The story of women and children is the story of humanity itself. Their patience was our continuity. Their knowledge was our survival. Their love, quiet and enduring, was the foundation upon which every civilization was built. Long before the rise of empires or the carving of names into stone, the future of mankind was written not by kings or warriors, but by those who carried the flame of life through the darkest nights. The women who nurtured the children who learned, and the endless chain of generations who together became the architects of the human spirit.